Hello, Corbin.
Hey Blake,
How's it going?
it's going good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I would just like to talk to you about a topic that I think is pretty interesting to me. I think you're interested in it too.
All
Has
right,
to do
let's
with
do it.
history though, so I don't know how you feel about that, but it's
Hey man,
World
I'm
War
down for
Two.
whatever.
World War Two.
Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about World War Two and some of the interesting sides of it. World War Two, obviously, as you know, is very big war. A lot of
Yeah,
different aspects play a role in that war, and it's kind of one of the biggest conflicts, at least nations involved wise, that we've seen ever.
yeah.
But I'd like to let you go first. Let's just start at the beginning, the
Okay.
beginning of it all.
I think the beginning for me is the end of World War One when Germany was forced to pay an absolutely massive amount of reparations for what they had done in World War One, which I think put them in a really bad spot economically, and like socially, because like morale, in the
Yeah,
country probably wasn't great at the time.
I would agree. I would agree to that. After World War One, they were basically had to show up for the bill of that whole entire war,
Yeah,
um, and really it was just really embarrassing for them because in World War One, no one knew really what they were fighting for. Not as clearly, it was more gray than World War Two
yeah,
was. But after the end of World War One, it was just the Allies giving them a big old bill to pay, and
yeah,
the humiliation of losing. Well, no one really lost that war, but whoever had to pay
yeah.
basically lost. And to Germany, which was a proud nation before that, they were just devastated, in my opinion. They were chastised by all of the allies
Yeah,
and forced to pay this incredible bill that would lead to anger and really what we see in World War II. But the thing that I find interesting is that the Germans, they were normal people for the most part until one man and his group of people who enabled him to do the things that he did
yeah,
somehow, and we'll get to that later, of how incredible the things that Nazi Germany was able to achieve in coming back from such depression, because they were in a Great Depression. That war completely drained them financially, and most of their government would end up falling very quickly to the Nazi Party. But
yeah,
interesting to look at the social aspect of that and how most people didn't really know what was happening in World War II. All they knew was that they were poor once, and this new guy, Adolf Hitler, was running things now, and they weren't poor anymore, and they were
yeah,
finally getting back to their economic and social status in the globe. And it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah. I think that's a good transition into how like the Nazi Party really started, though. I think that maybe they used like the reparations and like where the country was as like ammunition, in like speeches and stuff
oh,
in order to get
definitely.
more public support.
Hitler himself, he was very effective at public speaking, starting in taverns, speaking to the common folks who were taking the brunt, really. All of people in Germany would feel the backlash of losing, or well, having to pay the bill for
Yeah,
World War One, but the people that were most affected were the common middle class working folk who they lost their jobs, they
taxes.
taxes increased exponentially over the
Yeah,
years.
and if they're anything like Americans, they do not like taxes.
Yeah, and you see with that, Hitler, he's also a very patriotic man, veteran of World War One. He sees this, he sees his nation in shambles, and he just doesn't stand for it. So he's going to go find someone to blame
Yeah,
and get all the support from that, again, using ammo basically to his advantage.
yeah,
And he's going to go talk to the common folk who are very passionate and want to get out of their desperate situations that they're in. And he's going to really pull together this incredible force out of seemingly nothing. The funds, they come from somewhere, somehow. the strategies that he comes up with, the people, the structure that he makes in the government and military. It's just I don't even know how
Yeah.
to describe it. It's incredible.
It's like
Yeah,
it seems crazy in hindsight, but out of desperation and his ability to sway people to his side and like the wording that he would use, I can imagine how maybe it would be hard to disagree with him. Because it's like he made it sound like he had real like good plans for the country before he got all weird.
yeah, to that point, obviously he turned out to be not a good guy, but in
Yeah,
the eyes of these people, he was for them and
exactly.
he was willing to do anything for his country
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things, and he would end up doing terrible, terrible things.
yeah. Like there was
All
problems and he offered to solve them. So why would you say no? And then it turned into like this crazy. Like he was elected. You have to remember that he was voted for by the people, and then he used executive action for us, like
yes, yes,
where
yes,
it's like
yes.
an executive order. He like used that kind of power to get himself in charge alone, and then he started doing all the crazy stuff that maybe people didn't agree with, or I hope they didn't.
Yeah, he saw an opportunity in the Germany's government at that time. He had connections throughout his military career, I'm assuming, to people in power of government, and he saw his opportunity with a weak government of Germany,
Yeah,
and he used every asset to his advantage. He used the social climate, the economic climate, all of that to play really to his advantage, all of it. He got early people that would
yeah,
eventually become the Gestapo to help really bully his opponents in politics. And then, under strange circumstances, he took over power, really.
yeah. I remember reading a story about Hitler sending his party or like people from his party that were in charge to go assassinate another party leader at like a collection for that political party, like a convention. And I just thought that that was so crazy that it seemed like people knew what was happening, but like chose to ignore it or just like had too much support for him. I don't know.
I feel like the people that knew, they had an idea of what was to come, and they had an idea of how ruthless his supporters were going to be, so they just didn't say anything. And they just kept their mouths shut, and then the other people, they just didn't know. I
Yeah,
don't know. And leading off of that, he used the same type of bully tactics when he started his takeover of Europe,
yeah,
uh, giving countries propositions, and either you come with us or you don't. He used his alliance with Russia to invade Poland, which was the real military wise start of World War
yeah,
II. And then he went on a spree of getting these small countries under his grasp and saying, "Hey, look, we're gonna we're gonna come. There's nothing you can do to stop us. We're
yeah.
going to
So either
invade countries."
surrender or get stomped on,
Yeah, exactly. And some
and
did, some didn't.
that's just
And
kind of how they moved through Europe. Like it was ruthless, and if they didn't, he would commit these horrible war crimes that were already illegal. They just chose to ignore the laws or didn't care and would do literally anything to win.
yeah, and early in the war, the Allies, like Britain, they
Mhm.
really didn't do anything. They called it the phony war. Uh,
Yeah,
the leader of Britain, he went over to Germany to discuss with Hitler, like, hey, you can have this piece of land, but don't take any more.
yeah,
He thought everything was averted. They thought they would do it diplomatically. That didn't end up working.
yeah. That
People
did not
ended up
work out.
invading more, and so then Britain had to get involved. But us Americans, we had a different view on things, which I think is interesting.
We won't get involved until you force us.
Yeah, basically. We really didn't want to get involved at all.
Yeah,
Uh, off of the tail end of the last World War, where
yeah,
we really, people didn't really know why we were there anyways to begin with. And also, we were in a Great Depression.
Yeah. And well,
That's
as a superpower, wars are really expensive because you have to be, as a superpower, you have to be, well, a superpower of the wars. So you have to play this huge role. And in a war as big as World War One and World War Two, it gets really expensive because you're running this huge army, this huge Marine Corps, this huge Navy, and that you have to keep funding. And in an economic decline, that is a huge problem.
it is, and it also isn't, because money wars, they bring with it debt, and they also bring with it a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of
To
money
be made.
in war, and if you're on the winning side, you end up making a lot of money. World War
Yeah.
II, in my opinion, brought us, the US, out of the Great Depression starting in 39.
Hmm.
And I think that if it was not for World War II, a lot of countries would be worse off than they are now. Like, not to say that war should ever happen, but if it wasn't for that, Germany, it would have never gotten its funds. However, it got its funds and its allies, and America would have never had the jobs or the means to produce for a cause. Like, it wouldn't have had a
Yeah.
cause to produce so much, to make so much, to sell so much, to fund the war, but also make money from it. So that's kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. So, I don't want to let this go on for too much longer, but I have two more things that I want to talk about. One, talk firstly about your views on the morality of dropping a nuclear bomb on Japan after Pearl Harbor. Do you think that it was necessary and or morally okay to do that, given the circumstances, of course?
I I don't think that war is ever morally okay or right or justified in any way, but it is a thing that unfortunately happens on this planet.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, so taking a deeper look into Japan, you have a society that is taught from birth that a certain person, being the emperor, is God to you. And then whatever laws that he imposes on you, whether in wartime or peacetime, you abide by 100% of the time. Very proud nation, very stubborn. You already seen it in the island hopping campaigns when
Yeah.
we went to go fight Japan after Pearl Harbor.
Every man,
Uh,
every woman, every child that can serve will serve.
exactly. Every single inch was fought for tooth and nail by the Japanese, and we underestimated them, I believe. Dropping two bombs in the grand scheme of things, I think it's on par with what we were already doing. We had already switched our bombing strategics to not strategic bombing anymore. It was already targeting civilian populace. In
Hmm.
Europe and in Japan, it didn't matter. We were bombing cities, basically, because
Yeah.
you have on both fronts two enemies, stubborn, and they aren't playing by the rules. And so it's up to America to decide where this gray line, this imaginary line is, where it's way too messed up to do, or equal or on par to what the enemy is doing to win. And
Yeah.
looking into Japan, you have these laws where they're not going to stop, they're not going to surrender. They will die before surrender. Death before surrender is their motto.
Yeah.
And
Even
so,
in the end, it wasn't a unconditional surrender. They technically
exactly,
never surrendered on paper.
they never did. And I don't think that was even the last straw for them either. That was just us even further solidifying that, look, we're not going to give up. We're not going to stop until you stop. Whether you
Yeah.
call it surrendering, whether you call it stopping, we're still here and we're still going to fight you.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very long grind to get to a point where Japan was thinking about stopping, not surrendering, but stopping. And I think that the two bombs helped in that aspect of getting to that point of,
Yeah.
but it's not like we hadn't bombed their cities anymore. So if you look at it like that, yes, it was not okay, but yes, it was a justifiable thing, because you got to think war crimes, looking at the war crimes of World War II, Japan had already been up there with Germany in war crimes against the Chinese. Like, rounding up Chinese people. They didn't see the Chinese as people. They were as racist as Germany was to the Jews. Beheadings, executions, slave labor, human testing, in some cases, the worst of the worst things were seen by Japan and Germany. And war, that's why I say war is never justified, because there is no wrong or right. It's always gray. There's always going to be something that one nation has done during wartime that's been like, whoa, that's a little bit too far. And
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, it's whoever is doing the least of that is basically what I think is the most justifiable, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah. Sorry I gotta cut you off, but it was starting to seem like you were just gonna start talking forever. So,
Yeah, it's all
what
good.
my kind of view on it was like more of a statement than a bombing. It
I agree
was
with that.
the ultimate period to World War II's paragraph. It was like, listen, dog, if you don't stop right now and stop giving us problems, we can solve these problems real quick. Because
Yeah,
we can keep doing this, or, you know what I mean? Like, those bombs were absolutely devastating to where they hit. So I think that if you were the leader of a country and you did not have the power to release those bombs, and another one did, and they hit you twice,
it would be a
like,
real weird.
what choice do you have?
Exactly. Like, it's either stop or surrender. Whatever you have to do to stop being in conflict with that enemy that just did that to your country. I think you said it perfectly. It's the ultimate It's the ultimate period to the paragraph of World War II
Yeah.
in that aspect.
And then we'll go ahead and get to the closure. What do we think really stopped World War II? Because obviously we could go through how Germany decided to march on Russia. Terrible idea, by the way. And then go on and on about economic decline. But what do you think was the real nail in the coffin for World War II and the Axis powers?
So for the Axis powers, you have two main sides, Germany and Japan. Obviously, Japan took longer because our priorities were set on Germany because we deemed Germany was a bigger threat at the time. I think for Germany, in my opinion, I think it would have to probably be D-Day for Germany,
Okay.
because either a combination of D-Day and the Battle of Britain, because you have to think of it, an army or a nation's military is a couple separate branches. And for Germany, they had in early war, they relied on their air power, their tanks, their mechanized infantry, and their U-boats, not their navy as much, but their U-boats. The U-boats became ineffective long before, when Britain cracked their Enigma codes and all that and figured out how they were moving. Their air power dwindled at the Battle of Britain, where they got most of their airplanes destroyed in that battle. And really, all they had left was their mechanized infantry, and it was getting rough for them because they were running out of gas. But D-Day, in my opinion, because we were on their occupied land now.
Yeah.
Like, we had been in Italy, sure, but Italy was still there. We had been in Africa, sure, but we invaded mainland Europe.
The homeland of the war. The
Mainland Europe,
birthplace.
something that the Germans didn't think was ever going to happen, the largest invasion. So that's why I think that for the Germany side. For Japan, I think ultimately that their decline really, the nail in their coffin was really the Battle of Midway for me, because Japan had a formidable navy and air power. Basically, their naval and air power combined was formidable. And in Midway, we basically clipped that. We destroyed four of their carriers. It was a massive victory for the US and massive payback for Pearl Harbor. But once that happened, what were they going to do? They couldn't go on the offensive anymore because they're an island nation. All of their territories and occupations are other island entities. And for that reason, it was really the end of them, I think.
All right. Yeah, I agree. So now that we've come to the end of the war and how we feel like it closed, I think we should come to the end of this podcast and close this because we're almost 10 minutes over our maximum time allotment. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting submitted regardless, but
Yeah. Pretty much.
okay.
Anyways,
This was good. Real good.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Corbin.
Of course.